People always told me my sister had a gift for arranging things. She could take a shoebox full of mismatched ribbons and turn it into a centerpiece. She could wrangle cousins and toddlers and aunts into a photo that looked candid. She could walk into a room that felt like chaos and quietly move three objects, and suddenly everything made sense. I used to call it magic. Now, when I replay the day I married Aaron, I understand that arranging and controlling our cousins. One looks like kindness. The other wears kindness like a dress with pockets big enough to hide knots. I should start where I first felt the pinprick, even if I didn't name it then. It was 3 months before the wedding, and my sister, Lee, was at my apartment helping with invitations. I put helping in quotes because by then she'd appointed herself point person on everything. Vendor emails, bridal party group chat, my own calendar. She sat on my couch with a clipboard, legs crossed, hair in a swishy ponytail that said I woke up like this. She kept tilting her head when I spoke, like she was trying to hear unnecessary frequency. I just wanted to be perfect, she said, which is a sentence no event has ever survived. You deserve perfect. I believed her. I had always believed her. We grew up in a small house that had to be cleaned within an inch of its life to disguise how small it was, and Lee learned early that a well-placed throw blanket can soften poverty, that a candle in a bathroom can rewrite a narrative. When our father left, she became the person who could walk into our mother's room and tuck the grief back under the bed. It left a mark. At night she took the clipboard. She also took the guest list. Less stress for you, she's saying, and I handed it over the way you hand over a bundle of balloons to someone who promises not to let go. It felt like love. The next pinprick was the suit. Aaron had chosen a dark slate blue, clean lines, something he said made him feel like himself but better. Lee wrinkled her nose when I showed her a photo. Are you sure you want that? She had asked. He's a winter. He should be in cooler tones. I laughed and said, slate blue is a cool tone, and she said, right, totally, with the tone of someone who hates your haircut and calls it bold. 2 weeks later, the tailor called Aaron to confirm the change order. Change order? He repeated. My fiancé called and asked to switch to charcoal, the tailor said. Aaron looked at me, eyebrows up. I looked at him, throat tight. I didn't change it, I told him. He believed me, because Aaron believes until you give him a reason not to. The tailor switched it back. When I called Lee to ask whether she minded, it must have been a miscommunication, she said, all breath and innocence. You know how vendors are. I didn't know how vendors are. I knew it because I was a vendor once, in a different life, before I learned that other people's events were a shortcut to making your own feel smaller than you meant them to. I let it go. There were a dozen little miscommunications like that. The florist forgot I'd asked for anemones. The bakery never received the reference photo of our cake. The show company misread the timeline, so half my family showed up to the rehearsal dinner after the food was cold. Each time, Lee called them and solved it, sighing afterwards like a martyr home from war. She would stroke my hair and say, You're so lucky, I'm organized, and I would thank her because that's what you do when the house is on fire and someone hands you a glass of water. It wasn't until the week of the wedding that the pricks started to draw blood. I woke up 3 days before Saturday to a text from my maid of honor, Nina. We need to talk. Call me. Her voice shook when she answered. Are you sure you want to do this? She asked. What? I said, still caught in the soft glue of sleep. Get married. A laugh, then stopped when I heard how it sounded. What are you talking about? Lee said you've been second-guessing, Nina said, words spelling fast like she was trying to get them out before she lost the nerve. She said you asked her to tell me and not to tell anyone else so Aaron wouldn't freak out. That you feel like Aaron is, I don't know, a safe choice? That maybe you're not ready? I sat up so fast the sheet twisted my legs. I never said that. It's okay if you did, she said gently. We'll support you if. I never said that, I repeated, blood bedding behind my eyes. After I hung up, I called Lee. She didn't pick up and said a text. In with the rental company. Can't talk. Don't stress, babe. Drink water. I stared at the screen until it felt like it was staring back. I told myself she'd misheard me. I told myself 100 things because telling yourself things is easier than admitting you don't recognize your sister. The rehearsal dinner should have been easy. It was at my mother's favorite restaurant. White tablecloths, a chalkboard menu, candles that made everybody look like a kinder version of themselves. People gave toasts that were funny, in the exact right way. My father did not show up, which was its own blessing. My mother didn't cry, which was another. Lee kept squeezing my hand under the table as if to say, see? Perfect. After dessert, Aaron's cousin Jonah stood up with a grin and said he had a surprise, which turned out to be a slideshow of baby photos that made everyone cool. It should have ended there. But after the baby photos came a set of pictures I'd never seen. Me at 24 with a horrible haircut. Me at 26 on a beach with a man whose name I barely remember. Me drunk on the couch at a party my sister threw when I was too sad to sleep in my own bed. The captions were lighthearted. The implication wasn't. It felt like the wedding version of Remember. She's not perfect. I kept my face in place because that's what women do when something cuts them in front of witnesses. We bleed in small ways, so nobody has to see the mess. After the dinner, on the way to the car, I asked Leah if she'd given Jonah those photos. I might have sent a few, she chirped. For color. He asked for help. How did he even know to ask you? She shrugged. Everybody knows I'm the point person. Did you think those were appropriate? I asked, careful and cold. She blinked at me. They're funny. They're humiliating, I said, and her mouth did that precise little curl that means she's about to call you sensitive. It's a wedding, not a canonization, she said, and walked ahead of me like the conversation didn't deserve her time. I wish I could say I slept that night. I lay there and watched the ceiling fan and listened to the quiet sound Aaron makes when he's deeply asleep, like a far-off tide. I wanted to wake him and say, "Do you see it? Do you see the way she's pulling threads?" But even in my hurt there was a girl in me who wanted to protect everyone else from the scene. Morning came, indifferent. The day before the wedding was a blur of appointments packed back to back like ad Tetris. Nails, hair trial, seating chart check-in, vendor walk-through. Lee was everywhere, floating, fixing, frowning. At the seating chart review, she tutted at the names and said, "Oh no, we can't put Aunt Carol with your coworker Danny. She's still mad about the balloon thing," and moved 3 cards. Then 15. Then 40. "Do not touch that again," I said finally, not loudly but in a voice that turned a few heads. Lee blinked, and for a second I saw it. The thing behind her eyes that isn't light but hunger. Then she softened, as if she could iron her own face. "You're stressed," she said. "I'll handle it." She sent me home to rest while she tied up loose ends. On the way out, she hugged me hard and whispered, "I know what I'm doing." I forget sometimes that confidence and competence live on different streets. The morning of the wedding arrived like a fact. I woke up before my alarm, walked to the window, and watched the light be ordinary. It steadied me. The girls arrived with coffee and makeup in chaos. Lee walked in late, glowing in a silk robe, the exact pink of a good grapefruit. She kissed my cheek and said, "Today I'm your shield," which might be the strangest thing anyone has ever said to me. On a day, there were so many simple words available. The photographer took pictures of my dress hanging in the window like it was about to climb inside the light and become holy. Nina handed me a letter Aaron had written, and I cried for the first time in days. Ugly cried, the kind that cracks you open and leaves you lighter. It said he loved me for the exact things I am always tempted to apologize for. My tendency to over-explain my feelings, my habit of singing the wrong words to songs, my impulse to organize the fridge by color. I breathed. I was going to marry a man who knew me and liked me anyway. Hair. Makeup. Shoes. Laughter that sounded almost like fun. Leah adjusting my veil, then murmuring, "Almost there," like we were pushing a boulder up a hill together. Then Nina's phone buzzed in a way that made her face go still. "Hey," she said carefully. "Did you text Aaron?" "No," I said, smiling because how cute, a little superstition on the morning of. "We're not talking until the first look." "Right," she said, eyes on the screen. "It's just, there's a message from your phone asking him to meet you in the parking lot." No, a cold breath spooled down my back. I did not send that. "Maybe it's from last night," Nina offered weakly, then frowned. "No. It's time-stamped 5 minutes ago." Leah appeared at my shoulder like a stage direction. "What's wrong?" she asked in a voice that sounded helpful 2 times over. Nina showed her the screen. Lee's mouth tightened in a way you'd only notice if you'd been noticing. The 3 of us marched toward the elevator, skirts swishing, floral robes fluttering like flags. The parking lot was a bright sheet of heat. Aaron stood under the only tree, looking like a man who'd been pulled out of a good dream and asked to do math. "Hey," he said, confused and smiling at the same time, my favorite expression of his because it means love is bigger than context. "You texted?" I shook my head, holding up my phone like proof. "Not me." "Ha," he said, and then he glanced at Lee. and something like worry passed over his face and was gone. "What's up?" he said it to me, but Lee answered. "Probably some mix-up," she said. "You know how a hotel Wi-Fi is." We stood there in the weird mess until standing there itself became weirder than going back inside. Aaron kissed my forehead and said, "It's okay," and the way he said it made me believe him again for a few more minutes. The ceremony set itself up like a picture. Chairs in clean rows. My mother clutching a tissue and smiling the way people smile when they're trying to let joy win. Lee gliding by with the card box in her arms like a hostess in a glossy magazine spread. I lined up with the bridesmaids and watched the world narrow to a white aisle, and the man waiting at the end of it holding his breath. I was fine. Really, actually fine. Until I got to the front and realized Lee wasn't in her spot. She was by the musician, whispering. Her ripple went through the crowd as the song changed mid-phrase. It wasn't the one we chose. It was the lullaby our father used to play when our mother cried in the kitchen. For a second, the present was a room with the lights off, and I was a kid in socks on linoleum looking up at my sister and asking if we were safe. I blinked and came back to an altar and a man with love on his face and Lee's perfectly arranged absence. The rest of the ceremony was a movie I'd seen in a different life. Mouse rings, the part where the officiant made a joke that I think landed. We kissed and people clapped, and Tara from work cried in a way that made me want to buy her tissues forever. It wasn't until the photos between the ceremony and the reception that the thread Lee had been tugging finally let go. Photographer wrangled family while Lee helped. Every time I posed with someone, Lee would lean in and whisper a note, shin down, turn more toward your good side. Maybe not with Aunt Carol, you know how she gets. Let's do one without that person. That person was Aaron's sister, Myra, who has been nothing but polite to me since the day we met. Absolutely not, I said, too sharp, and Lee smiled like I'd done a trick. Inside the reception hall, the centerpieces were perfect, the candles were perfect, the escort cards were calligraphy dreams. The one thing not perfect was the seating chart, which had evolved overnight into a political map of the Middle East. Our college friends were nowhere near each other. My cousin Miss Celia was placed between two pasta dishes. Aaron's parents were split across the room. "We need to fix this," I whispered to Lee as the DJ announced our names. "This is what works," she whispered back. Trust me. Trust is a word that sounds like love in a crowded room. We made our entrance, we did the first dance, we laughed in the right places. I was about to take my first bite of food when the DJ tapped the mic and said, "And now, a few words from the maid of honor." I hadn't seen Lee's speech. She refused to send it early where it said it would be funny in the moment. The first minute was golden. Jokes about childhood, the way I used to insist on reading the manual before building anything. This summer we both got food poisoning from a street fair carousel corn dog and watched 3 seasons of a British detective show in a fever. People laughed. I laughed. Then she pivoted. "Most of you know I'm protective of my little sister," she said, and her voice did a thing that made my palms sweat. I watched her make amazing choices. And some not so amazing ones. Nervous laughter, the kind people make to fill space. There were moments. "Sorry, Mom," when we thought she'd run from anything too good for her. Moments when we thought she might choose chaos over safety. She was looking at me but talking to them. So when Aaron came along, you can imagine my relief. She smiled at him, and I swear it had teeth. Because he is steady. He is patient. He is Annette. She paused to let that land. And I just want to say that if anything today felt tough, it was only because sometimes the people we love most get scared when they are finally getting what they deserve. The room went very quiet in a way that says everyone is confused, but nobody will say so while holding the fork. She lifted her glass. "To Sasha," she said. To Aaron, who loves her enough to hold the line. People cheered because weddings have scripts. I sat there holding my champagne flute and a feeling like someone had reached into my dress and rearranged my ribs. Aaron's hand found my knee under the table and squeezed. "Breathe," he said softly. "Don't give the moment more than it deserves." I nodded and put the glass to my mouth and swallowed resentment like bubbles. The thing about long cons is that they only work if you end with an event people will remember. Lee's finale arrived during the bouquet toss. After the scramble, the DJ announced, "Please draw your attention to the big screen for a special send-off." The projector lit up with a video montage. The first clip was me falling off a paddleboard and swearing. Fine. The second was a drunken karaoke night where I mangled "Don't Stop Believin'," embarrassing, but survivable. The third was a screen recording of a text conversation. My name at the top, words I recognized and didn't. I don't know if I'm ready, piped in my bubble. He's safe, but is he exciting? It kept going. Me admitting I wasn't sure. Me asking Lee to cover for me if I freaked out. Gas snapped like rubber bands around the room. My mother made a small sound that was almost a word. Aaron's jaw went tight. I could feel the room bend toward the screen like flowers toward a window. What is this? I whispered. This is not real. Lee sent them to me. Then DJ blurted into his mic, which he had not muted. She said you wanted it to be honest. Turn it off, Aaron said, not loudly but in a voice that halted the room. The DJ fumbled with the remote and the screen went black. Ladies and gentlemen, Aaron said, standing, and the DJ thrust the mic at him like it was a life preserver. Aaron looked at me, then at our people. I love my wife, he said. The word wife hit me in the sternum. If you know her, you know she thinks in drafts. She writes, she revises, she over-explains, because she wants to get it right. If there are messages that sound like doubt, it's because she has never pretended to herself. That's why I married her. He handed the mic back and sat. The room exhaled like a parachute opening. People clapped. Lee laughed too brightly, then disappeared. The rest of the night happens in little snapshots in my mind. My mother gripping my hand, hot enough to leave crescents. Nina standing in my blind spot like a bodyguard. Aaron's sister Mara putting a plate of cake in front of me without asking whether I wanted it. The florist, of all people, pressing a hand to my back and saying, I've seen worse, bowing. I found Lee outside by the dumpsters, smoking a cigarette she'd stolen from somewhere, even though she doesn't smoke. What was that? I asked, not bothering to keep my voice pretty. She flinched as if the volume was the sin. I was helping, she said. Helping who? The theater department. She rolled her eyes. You freak out every time something is stable, she said. I wanted you to own it before you ruined it. You forged texts, I said. You changed the song. You moved the seating. You sent Jonah those photos. You told Nina I was second-guessing. You told the DK to run that video. You. She flicked ash. You're welcome, I laughed then. It wasn't a nice laugh. It was an animal noise. Why? I asked. Why would you do that? She stared past me at the flashing kitchen window where people were stacking plates. Because you get everything, she said finally, voice flat. Because you always land on your feet. Because Mom looks at you like you hung the moon, and looks at me like I'm holding the ladder. Because he loves you easy, and I have never had easy. Because when Dad left, you cried and people held you and I held towels. Then she looked at me, a little too calm. Because I wanted to see if anyone would still clap if the curtain fell halfway. I stood there feeling like my dress weighed 60 pounds. And I asked. She smiled small and satisfied. They did, she said, and dropped the cigarette, crushed it under her heel, and walked back in like she was late for a dance. After the wedding, there were the practicalities. You don't picture when you pick napkin colors. My mother asked Lee not to come by for a while. Lee posted a carousel of photos with a caption about honesty being the best gift. Jonah sent an apology text that was really a defense of his creative choices. The DJ refunded half. Taylor sent me a bottle of wine because he'd heard things got spicy, which made me suspect Lee had yelled at him that morning just to practice. Aaron and I went to a small town by the ocean for our honeymoon and spent the first 2 days not talking about it, the third day talking about nothing else. The fourth day sitting in a diner eating pancakes at 2 in the afternoon and making a list of everything we would do differently if we were forced to do a wedding again under duress by a court order. Elope was number 1. Hire a bunch of her family, number 2. No slideshows, number 3 through 5. When we got home, Lee sent flowers with a note that read, We both know you needed the spectacle. Love you, mean it. I put the flowers in the trash with the cards still attached so they could die together. A week later, I met Lee at a coffee shop because I am the kind of person who wants a scene to make sense even if I have to beat it into shape. She arrived 10 minutes late and kissed the air near my cheek. How's married life? She asked as if she had not tried to tear the veil with her bare hands. You don't get access no more, I said. The sentence surprised even me with how clean it was. She laughed, then stopped when she saw I wasn't playing. Are you serious? Yes. You're going to throw away your sister because I made your wedding interesting. I'm going to put a lock on a door you keep walking through with muddy shoes, I said. You can stay on the porch for a while. She went cold quickly, the way a room does when the air conditioner kicks on. You're ungrateful, she said. You always have been. Maybe, I said. Maybe, I am finally grateful to myself. I paid for my coffee and left her with the bill because I am a petty person and petness is a kind of self-care if it's under $10. We didn't speak for 3 months. In that time, I learned how to be married without an audience. We made dinner at stupid hours and ate standing up. We laughed about nothing in particular because the house was quiet. I slept deeply for the first time in a year because the calendar on the fridge did not have color-coded drama. My mother called and whispered updates like state secrets. She misses you, she said once, then quickly, but you don't owe her anything. Holidays were complicated, then less so. People adjust. We teach them how. On our 6-month anniversary, Erin made the lullaby our father used to play, and we danced to it in the kitchen very quietly. I thought I might cry. I didn't. I just felt the click of something that had been loose finding its notch. If there's a lesson here beyond, don't give your sister your clipboard. It is this. Family isn't a passcode that guarantees entry. It is a set of choices you make over and over until the choices become a foundation, and the foundation holds even when someone tugs at the carpet. I learned that arranging and controlling look the same until the light changes. I learned that love is not a net if it's woven out of resentment. I learned that standing at an altar while someone tries to pull you down is still standing, and that the person you marry matters not only because of who they are under fairy lights, but because of what they do when a screen lights up with a version of you that isn't real. Aaron did not make a speech about me being perfect. He made a statement about me being a person. He didn't ask me to prove I wasn't the woman in those texts. He knew I'd draft, revise, and panic, and choose anyway. He didn't wrestle my sister in the parking lot. He turned off the projector. Sometimes winning is not a victory lap. Sometimes it's a quiet click as the machine shuts down. Lee will tell her own version of this story forever. In hers, I am a drama queen who needed saving, and she, brave and misunderstood, provided the arc. If you hear her side, you might believe it because she is very good at arranging rooms and people and narratives. That is okay. I'm done arranging my life so she looks good in the picture. I keep one photo from the reception on my desk. Me and Aaron and a blur of sparklers, and the exact moment a child in a white dress ran through our legs and made us both laugh from the bottom of our bodies. Lee is not in the frame. It is, perhaps, the kindest thing I can say. If you are planning a wedding and you have a Lee in your life, here is my unsolicited advice. Give her a job that has limits. Give her a budget that is not your sanity, and keep your phone in your maid of honor's bag. Pick your music and put it on a playlist only you control. And when someone says trust me, ask them if they mean love me or let me. There is a difference. I know it now. I know it the way I know which burner on our stove heats slow and which one will burn your eggs if you blink. I know that names on a seating chart are not politics. They are a map of who loves who enough to sit next to their story for a meal. I know that the people who truly love you will clap even when the projector is dark and the sun is wrong. And I know that if you spend years letting someone pull threads, you should not be shocked when your dress puddles on the floor. You should be surprised at how quickly you learn to move without it. Lighter, faster, no train gathering gear behind you, just you and a person who calls you wife like it's a word that got lost and finally came home.